The surveillance footage shows the exact moment everything went dark. Tuesday, March the 15th, 7:32 p.m. The timestamp freezes as First Bank National's main electrical grid suddenly fails. Emergency lighting kicks in, bathing the vault level in an eerie red glow. Alarm systems switch to backup mode, creating a critical vulnerability window that would cost the bank $9.2 million. In the grainy emergency lighting, a figure in electrician's coveralls moves methodically through the corridors, carrying standard electrical tools and wearing the authorized contractor uniform that had granted him access hundreds of times before. His name was Derrick Lawson, and he was about to execute one of the most sophisticated bank thefts in modern history, using nothing more than his intimate knowledge of the building's electrical systems and perfect timing. The storm outside provided natural cover for what appeared to be a routine emergency service call. Heavy rain lashed the windows, lightning illuminated the downtown Cincinnati skyline, and power fluctuations across the city created the perfect pretext for an electrician to be working late at a major financial institution. By 7:42 p.m., the power was restored, security systems came back online, and everything appeared normal. The overnight security guard noted Derrick's departure in the logbook, thanked him for the quick response to the electrical emergency, and locked the building for the night. It would be 12 hours before anyone realized that $9.2 million in unmarked bills had walked out the door in an electrician's toolbox. This is the story of how one man's technical expertise, insider access, and careful planning allowed him to commit the perfect crime during a 10-minute power outage and vanish without a trace. Before we dive into how one overlooked janitor made off with nearly $6 million in diamonds, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more true crime documentaries, and drop a comment if you've ever wondered who really holds the keys after hours. Let's get into it. Derrick James Lawson was exactly the kind of person who could disappear into the background of any room. At 42, he stood average height with graying brown hair, wore unremarkable clothes, and spoke in the measured tones of someone who had spent decades working with complex electrical systems. He was the epitome of the trusted contractor, competent, reliable, and completely forgettable. Lawson had been working as a licensed electrical contractor in the Cincinnati area for over 15 years, specializing in commercial and institutional electrical systems. His company, Midwest Electrical Services, held contracts with dozens of businesses, including 3 major banks, 2 hospitals, and the county courthouse. His reputation was spotless, always on time, always professional, and always able to solve problems that other electricians couldn't figure out. First Bank National had been using Derrick's services for nearly 4 years. He had upgraded their main electrical panels, installed new security lighting systems, and performed routine maintenance on the complex array of electronics that kept the bank's operations running smoothly. The building's electrical infrastructure held no secrets from him. He knew every circuit, every backup system, and every vulnerability that existed within the maze of wires and control panels that most people never thought about. Bank employees knew Derrick by sight and trusted him implicitly. He had access to areas of the building that were off limits to most contractors, including the basement levels where the vault systems and main electrical controls were located. His background check had been thorough and clean. His insurance was current, his licenses were up to date, and his work had always been exemplary. What nobody knew was that Derrick had been quietly studying the bank's security systems for over 2 years, not as part of his legitimate work, but in preparation for the crime he was planning. Every service call had been an opportunity to gather intelligence, to understand the relationship between the electrical systems and the security protocols, and to identify the narrow window of vulnerability that would eventually allow him to walk away with millions of dollars. Derrick lived alone in a modest ranch house in the suburb of Norwood, about 20 minutes from downtown Cincinnati. He had never married, had no close friends, and maintained the kind of low-profile existence that made him nearly invisible to those around him. His neighbors described him as quiet and polite, someone who kept his yard neat and never caused any trouble. He drove a 10-year-old Ford pickup truck, shopped at the same hardware store every week, and lived within his means on the steady income from his electrical contracting business. The only unusual aspect of Derrick's life was his obsessive attention to detail and his habit of documenting everything. His home office contained meticulously organized files on every job he had ever completed, including detailed electrical schematics, security system diagrams, and timing logs that recorded exactly how long various procedures took to complete. To anyone who might have seen these files, they would have appeared to be the work of an exceptionally thorough professional. In reality, they represented years of preparation for the crime that would make Derrick Lawson one of the FBI's most wanted fugitives. The weather forecast for Tuesday, March 15th, called for severe thunderstorms across the Ohio Valley, with the potential for damaging winds and widespread power outages. For Derrick Lawson, it was exactly the conditions he had been waiting for. He had been monitoring weather patterns for months, knowing that a significant storm would provide the perfect cover for what would appear to be a legitimate emergency service call. At 4:30 p.m., Derrick received the call he had been expecting. First Bank National's facility manager, Linda Rodriguez, explained that they were experiencing intermittent power fluctuations and wanted him to check their surge protection systems before the storm intensified. It was exactly the type of proactive maintenance call that Derrick had responded to dozens of times before, and Linda had no reason to suspect that this request would be any different. Derrick arrived at the bank at 6 p.m., just as the staff was completing their end-of-day procedures. He checked in with the security desk, presented his contractor identification, and explained that he would be working on the electrical systems in the basement. The security guard, Robert Martinez, made the standard log entry and provided Derrick with the temporary access badge that would allow him to move freely throughout the building. The bank's main electrical room was located 2 floors below street level, adjacent to the vault complex and the central security monitoring station. It was a restricted area that only authorized personnel could access. But Derrick's contractor status and 4-year history with the bank meant that his presence there was completely routine and unremarkable. For the next hour and 15 minutes, Derrick performed legitimate electrical maintenance, testing surge protectors, checking voltage levels, and verifying that the backup power systems were functioning properly. His work was genuine and thorough. If anyone had monitored his activities during this period, they would have seen nothing but standard professional service. At 7:15 p.m., with the storm intensifying outside and most of the bank's staff having departed for the evening, Derrick began the final phase of his preparation. He had spent months studying the bank's electrical systems and had identified a specific sequence of actions that would create a controlled power outage affecting only the security systems while maintaining basic lighting and life safety functions. The key to Derrick's plan was his understanding of the bank's backup power protocols. During a power outage, the security systems would automatically switch to battery backup, but there was a critical 10-minute window during the switchover process when certain components were vulnerable. The surveillance cameras would reboot, the alarm system would perform a diagnostic cycle, and the electronic locks on the vault would reset to their fail-safe positions. At exactly 7:32 p.m., Derrick initiated the power outage by tripping a specific combination of circuit breakers that he had identified during his previous maintenance visits. To anyone monitoring the electrical systems, it would appear that a power surge from the storm had overloaded the main panel, causing an automatic shutdown to protect the bank's sensitive electronic equipment. The building's emergency lighting activated immediately, but the security monitoring station showed multiple system alerts as cameras, sensors, and alarm panels began their restart sequences. Derrick had exactly 10 minutes before the backup systems would be fully operational again, 10 minutes to access the vault, remove $9.2 million in cash, and restore power to cover his tracks. As the red emergency lights cast eerie shadows throughout the basement corridors, Derrick Lawson began the most audacious theft in the bank's history, using his legitimate access and technical knowledge to commit what would become known as the perfect electrical crime. With the security systems in their vulnerable reset cycle, Derrick moved quickly through the familiar basement corridors toward the vault complex. The emergency lighting provided just enough illumination for him to navigate safely, while maintaining the authenticity of what appeared to be an electrician responding to a power emergency. The vault's electronic locking system was controlled by the same electrical circuits that Derrick had just manipulated. During the backup power switchover, the massive steel door's locks defaulted to a maintenance mode that allowed authorized personnel to access the vault during emergencies. Derrick had discovered this fail-safe protocol during a previous service call when he had been asked to verify that the vault's electronic systems would function properly during power outages. Using the bypass codes that he had memorized during legitimate system tests, Derrick accessed the vault's manual override panel. The process took less than 90 seconds. He entered a sequence of commands that temporarily disabled the locking mechanisms, while the security cameras remained offline and the alarm system completed its diagnostic cycle. The vault door, weighing nearly 3 tons, swung open on its precisely balanced hinges. Inside, the climate-controlled chamber contained row upon row of cash storage units, safety deposit boxes, and document archives. Derrick moved directly to the cash storage area, guided by his knowledge of the vault's layout from previous maintenance visits when he had worked on the environmental control systems. The unmarked bills were organized in vacuum-sealed bundles, each containing exactly $50,000 in mixed denominations. The money was prepared for regular armored car transfers and was stored in a specific section of the vault that Derrick had observed during his reconnaissance. He had calculated that he could remove 184 bundles, totaling $9.2 million, while leaving enough cash behind to avoid immediate detection during routine inspections. Derrick had brought 2 identical toolboxes to the bank that evening. One contained his legitimate electrical tools and testing equipment. The other was specially modified with false compartments and lead-lined panels designed to shield the contents from metal detectors and X-ray scanning equipment. The modified toolbox could hold exactly $9.2 million in bundled cash, while maintaining the external appearance and weight distribution of a standard electrician's toolkit. Working with methodical efficiency, Derrick transferred the money bundles from their storage locations into the hidden compartments of his modified toolbox. The entire process took 8 minutes, leaving him 2 minutes to seal the vault and restore power to the bank's electrical systems. At 7:40 p.m., Derrick initiated the power restoration sequence, bringing the security systems back online in their normal operational mode. The surveillance cameras resumed recording, the alarm panels completed their diagnostic cycles, and the electronic locks engaged with their characteristic mechanical clicks. To anyone monitoring the systems, it appeared that the storm-related power outage had been resolved and all systems were functioning normally. Derrick spent an additional 15 minutes completing legitimate electrical maintenance, documenting the power outage in his service logs, and verifying that all systems were operating within normal parameters. His activities during this period were completely authentic. He actually did resolve several minor electrical issues that had been caused by the storm's power fluctuations. When Derrick finally departed the bank at 8:12 p.m., he carried with him $9.2 million in untraceable currency, hidden within the toolbox that he had carried into and out of dozens of financial institutions throughout his career. The security guard thanked him for his prompt response to the electrical emergency, noted his departure time in the logbook, and secured the building for the night. The perfect crime had been completed in exactly 40 minutes, and no one would realize that anything was missing until the following morning's cash transfer preparations revealed the devastating truth about what had occurred during those 10 critical minutes when the lights went out. Wednesday morning at First Bank National began with the usual routine of preparing for the weekly armored car transfer. Senior teller Patricia Williams arrived at 7 a.m. to begin the process of counting and organizing the cash that would be transported to the Federal Reserve Bank later that morning. The procedure was methodical and precise. Every bundle counted, every denomination verified, every security seal confirmed. Patricia descended to the vault level at 7:15 a.m., accompanied by vault custodian Michael Chen and security supervisor Janet Torres. The 3-person team followed strict protocol. Each provided individual access credentials. Michael entered the time-delayed vault combination, and Janet verified that all security systems showed normal operation throughout the night. The vault's electronic logs indicated that all systems had functioned normally, with only a brief notation about a power outage at 7:32 p.m. that had been resolved within 10 minutes. The overnight security guard's report mentioned that Derrick Lawson had responded to address storm-related electrical issues, completing his work by 8:12 p.m. Everything appeared routine and unremarkable. The first indication of a problem came during Patricia's preliminary count of the cash reserves. After 23 years of handling large currency transfers, she had developed an instinctive sense for volume and organization. The cash storage area looked different, not obviously disturbed, but somehow less dense than it should have been for a midweek transfer preparation. "Michael," Patricia said, consulting her documentation, "are we showing any large withdrawals or transfers that I might have missed?" Michael reviewed the electronic transaction logs from the previous day. There had been normal business activity, routine ATM replenishments, in standard commercial deposits, but nothing that would account for a significant reduction in vault cash reserves. According to all official records, the vault should contain approximately $15.8 million in various denominations. Janet Torres began a systematic verification of the vault's contents, while Patricia and Michael cross-referenced the electronic logs with the physical inventory. The security access records showed only authorized entries. Patricia's Monday evening deposit verification, the overnight cleaning crew's limited access to safety deposit areas, and Derrick's Tuesday evening maintenance visit during the power outage. The detailed count revealed the shocking truth. $9.2 million in unmarked bills was missing. The theft had been surgically precise. Large denomination bundles removed in a pattern that had initially disguised the extent of the loss. Smaller bills and coins remained untouched, as did marked currency designated for specific commercial accounts and all safety deposit boxes. At 8:47 a.m., Michael Torres activated the bank's emergency protocols. Within minutes, calls had been placed to First Bank National's corporate security office, the Cincinnati Police Department, and the local FBI field office. The vault was immediately sealed as a crime scene, and federal agents were dispatched to begin what would become one of the most challenging financial crime investigations in the region's history. The initial investigation focused on the most obvious suspects, bank employees with vault access. Patricia Williams, Michael Chen, Janet Torres, and 4 other staff members were interviewed extensively, their financial records examined, and their activities during the previous 48 hours thoroughly documented. All were cleared of suspicion within hours. Their alibis were solid, their financial situations were stable, and none had demonstrated any unusual behavior. The breakthrough came when FBI forensic specialists began analyzing the timing of the theft in relation to the building's electrical systems. Special Agent Rebecca Martinez noticed that the missing cash corresponded exactly with the 10-minute power outage that had occurred during Derrick Lawson's emergency service call. More significantly, the vault's access logs showed that the electronic locks had entered maintenance mode during that exact time window. This wasn't a coincidence, Agent Martinez reported to her supervisor. Someone with detailed knowledge of both the electrical systems and the vault security protocols exploited a specific vulnerability during that power outage. The timing is too precise to be accidental. By Thursday afternoon, investigators had obtained search warrants for Derrick's residence and business records. What they found at his Norwood home confirmed their worst fears. The house had been systematically cleaned out. Personal belongings were gone, financial accounts had been closed, and utility services had been canceled effective March 16th, the day after the theft. Derrick's business vehicle was discovered abandoned in a long-term parking lot at Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky International Airport, thoroughly cleaned of any evidence. His personal truck was found 2 days later at a truck stop in Lexington, Kentucky, also wiped clean. Both vehicles had been strategically positioned to suggest different escape routes while providing no concrete evidence of Derrick's actual destination. The FBI's technical analysis revealed the sophisticated nature of Derrick's crime. He had exploited a previously unknown vulnerability in the bank's integrated electrical and security systems, using legitimate maintenance access to mask unauthorized activity. The theft required not just electrical expertise, but intimate knowledge of bank operations, security protocols, and the precise timing of backup system vulnerabilities. Most troubling was the realization that Derrick had planned his escape with the same meticulous attention to detail he had applied to the theft itself. His contractor business had been quietly dissolved, his rental properties had been sold, and his bank accounts had been systematically emptied over a period of several months leading up to the crime. Agent Martinez briefed her team on the challenge they faced. "We're dealing with someone who spent years preparing for this crime and understood exactly how our investigation would proceed. He's had at least a 12-hour head start, and he's demonstrated the kind of operational security that suggests he may never be found." The discovery that Derrick Lawson had vanished with $9.2 million marked the beginning of what would become one of the FBI's most frustrating white-collar fugitive cases, a crime so precisely planned and executed that it left virtually no evidence and no meaningful leads for investigators to follow. Derrick Lawson's escape plan demonstrated the same meticulous preparation that had characterized every aspect of his criminal enterprise. Unlike many bank robbers who flee in panic, leaving behind a trail of evidence and witnesses, Derrick had spent nearly 2 years developing a disappearance strategy designed to give him permanent anonymity and the best chance of never being captured. The abandoned vehicles were only the first layer of a sophisticated misdirection campaign. The placement of his business truck at Cincinnati's airport and his personal vehicle at a Kentucky truck stop was intended to suggest multiple possible escape routes while providing no actual intelligence about his true destination. FBI analysis of surveillance footage from both locations revealed dozens of potential suspects, but no definitive identification of Derrick. Investigators eventually discovered that Derrick had established at least 3 separate false identities over the 18 months preceding the theft. Using techniques that demonstrated surprisingly sophisticated understanding of identity fraud, he had obtained authentic-looking documentation that included driver's licenses, social security numbers, and credit histories for fictional personas. The most complete false identity belonged to David Richardson, a 39-year-old electrical contractor with an address in Louisville, Kentucky, and a clean employment history with several commercial electrical companies. Richardson had rented vehicles, opened bank accounts, and established utility services, creating a complete alternative persona that could support Derrick's new life indefinitely. Financial forensics revealed that Derrick had been methodically converting his legitimate assets to cash for over a year before the theft. He had sold his electrical contracting business to a competitor, liquidated his retirement accounts, and closed all banking relationships in Cincinnati. The process had been so gradual and unremarkable that it attracted no attention from financial monitoring systems designed to detect suspicious activity. The $9.2 million in stolen currency had been carefully selected to avoid sequential serial numbers or other identifying characteristics that might make the money traceable. Derrick's knowledge of the bank's cash handling procedures had allowed him to target specific bundles that were unlikely to be missed immediately and were not associated with any ongoing federal investigations or tracking programs. 3 days after the theft, Derrick's personal vehicle was found at the truck stop in Lexington, Kentucky, abandoned and thoroughly cleaned of forensic evidence. Surveillance footage from the facility showed a man matching Derrick's description arriving at the location, but the individual wore a baseball cap and kept his face turned away from the cameras. Within hours of abandoning the truck, the man disappeared into the facility's busy commercial traffic. The FBI's investigation revealed that Derrick had pre-positioned additional resources along multiple potential escape routes. Storage units rented under false names contained cash, clothing, camping equipment, and forged documents. Several of these caches were never located, suggesting that Derrick had established more backup plans than investigators realized. Cell phone records indicated that Derrick had destroyed his electronic devices immediately after leaving the bank. The last signal from his phone occurred at 8:47 p.m. on March 15th, approximately 35 minutes after he had departed First Bank National. The signal originated from a cell tower near the Ohio River, suggesting that he had disposed of the device while crossing into Kentucky. International travel records were scrutinized extensively, but no passenger matching Derrick's description or any of his known aliases appeared on flights departing from regional airports in the days following the theft. Border crossing records similarly showed no trace of Derrick attempting to leave the country through official channels. The FBI's behavioral analysis suggested that Derrick would avoid international travel and instead disappear domestically, using his false identities to establish a new life in a location where his electrical skills would allow him to find work, without attracting attention. The stolen money would likely remain hidden for years while Derrick lived modestly off legitimate income, waiting for the intensity of the investigation to diminish. 6 months after the theft, a man matching Derrick's description was spotted at a hardware store in rural Montana, purchasing electrical supplies and paying with cash. Local law enforcement investigated, but found no concrete evidence linking the individual to Derrick Lawson. Similar sightings were reported in Oregon, New Mexico, and North Carolina, but none could be verified. The FBI offered a $250,000 reward for information leading to Derrick's capture and the recovery of the stolen funds. The reward announcement generated hundreds of tips from across the country, but extensive investigation revealed that none provided credible leads to Derrick's whereabouts. As the investigation entered its second year, Agent Martinez faced the uncomfortable reality that Derrick Lawson might never be found. Unlike most bank robbers, he had demonstrated exceptional operational security and appeared to have genuinely disappeared rather than simply hiding. His technical expertise, financial resources, and careful planning had created what amounted to a perfect escape from one of the most sophisticated thefts in FBI history. The FBI's investigation into Derrick Lawson's disappearance became a case study in the challenges of pursuing a highly intelligent, methodically prepared fugitive who had spent years planning not just his crime, but his escape and new identity. Special Agent Rebecca Martinez found herself leading a task force that was pursuing someone who seemed to understand their investigative methods better than they understood his criminal techniques. The technical analysis of the theft revealed layers of sophistication that impressed even veteran investigators. Derrick had not simply exploited a known vulnerability in the bank's security systems. He had identified and leveraged a previously unknown weakness in the integration between electrical and security protocols that had existed for years without being recognized by security professionals. This wasn't just an opportunistic crime, Agent Martinez explained to her team. Derrick spent years studying these systems, not just at First Bank National, but at multiple financial institutions. He understood the vulnerabilities better than the people who designed the security protocols. Computer forensics specialists examined every electronic device associated with Derrick's personal and professional life, but found only thoroughly wiped equipment with no recoverable data. His internet service provider's records showed routine usage patterns with no suspicious searches or communications that might reveal his criminal intentions or escape plans. The investigation expanded to include Derrick's professional network throughout the electrical contracting industry. Dozens of electricians, security technicians, and bank employees who had worked with Derrick were interviewed extensively. All described him as competent and professional, but none could provide insight into his personal motivations or possible hiding places. Derrick was like a professional ghost, said Thomas Chen, a security installer who had worked alongside him on several bank projects. He knew his job inside and out, but he never talked about anything personal. I worked with him for 3 years and couldn't tell you if he had hobbies, interests, or even favorite foods. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit developed a psychological profile that emphasized Derrick's technical expertise, social isolation, and apparent lack of emotional connections that might compromise his operational security. They predicted that he would avoid contact with anyone from his previous life, resist the temptation to spend stolen money conspicuously, and maintain a low profile indefinitely. Financial investigation revealed the extent of Derrick's long-term preparation. Bank records showed that he had been systematically liquidating assets and accumulating cash for over 18 months before the theft. The process had been so gradual and unremarkable that it triggered no automated monitoring alerts designed to detect suspicious financial activity. The multiple false identities that Derrick had established demonstrated sophisticated understanding of identity fraud techniques. Investigators discovered that David Richardson had obtained employment with electrical contractors in 3 different states, had rented storage units across the Midwest, and had established banking relationships that could support long-term financial independence. Creating authentic false identities requires significant research, planning, and resources, explained FBI identity fraud specialist Agent Michael Santos. Derrick somehow obtained documentation that passed institutional verification. This wasn't amateur work. He understood exactly what he needed and how to get it. The abandoned storage units that investigators eventually located provided insight into the scope of Derrick's preparation, but yielded no meaningful leads about his current location. The units contained cash, clothing, camping equipment, and forged documents, but had been abandoned according to a predetermined schedule that suggested Derrick had never intended to return to them. Geographic analysis of Derrick's known activities and resources suggested that he had focused his escape preparations on rural areas of the Mountain West and Pacific Northwest, regions where his electrical skills would be valuable and where someone could live relatively anonymously. However, the analysis also revealed that Derrick had deliberately created false leads pointing to multiple regions, making it impossible to predict his actual destination. The investigation's most frustrating aspect was the realization that Derrick had anticipated almost every investigative technique that would be used to pursue him. He had eliminated digital footprints, avoided personal relationships that could be exploited for information, and created multiple layers of misdirection that consumed investigative resources while providing no meaningful intelligence. International cooperation efforts focused on the possibility that Derrick might have fled to Canada or Mexico using forged documents. Border security records were analyzed extensively, but no crossings could be definitively linked to Derrick or his known aliases. Immigration authorities in both countries were provided with his photograph and biographical information, but reported no credible sightings. The media attention surrounding the case generated both helpful tips and significant complications for the investigation. While publicity increased the likelihood that someone might recognize Derrick, it also educated him about the extent of the investigation and potentially allowed him to adjust his operational security accordingly. As the case entered its third year, Agent Martinez acknowledged that traditional investigative methods might never locate Derrick Lawson. The FBI's resources were extensive, but they were pursuing someone who had demonstrated exceptional criminal sophistication and had apparently disappeared into a carefully constructed new identity that might be undetectable. "We're dealing with someone who understood our capabilities before he committed his crime," Martinez reported to FBI headquarters. "He anticipated our response and prepared accordingly. Unless he makes a significant operational mistake or someone with direct knowledge comes forward, this case could remain open indefinitely." The Derrick Lawson investigation had become a testament to how technical expertise, careful planning, and patient execution could allow a determined individual to commit a major crime and disappear completely. It challenged fundamental assumptions about criminal behavior and demonstrated that the most dangerous offenders might be highly intelligent, methodically prepared individuals who understood the systems they chose to exploit. 5 years have passed since Derrick Lawson walked out of First Bank National with $9.2 million, and his case has become legendary within both law enforcement and criminal justice academic circles. The FBI continues to classify him as one of their most wanted fugitives, but the active investigation has been scaled back as leads have dried up and the trail has gone completely cold. The impact of Derrick's crime extended far beyond the immediate financial loss. His exploitation of the vulnerability between electrical and security systems forced a complete reevaluation of bank security protocols nationwide. Every major financial institution reviewed their maintenance procedures, upgraded their backup power systems, and implemented new oversight requirements for contractor access during emergency situations. "Derrick didn't just steal money," explained Dr. Patricia Williams, a criminology professor who has studied the case extensively. "He exposed fundamental weaknesses in how we think about insider threats and the integration of building systems with security protocols. His crime forced the entire industry to recognize vulnerabilities that had existed for decades. The technical sophistication of Derrick's theft has made it a case study in security training programs and criminal justice courses. Unlike crimes of passion or desperation, his theft demonstrated how patient, intelligent planning could overcome even sophisticated protective measures." Security professionals now refer to Lawson-type vulnerabilities when discussing potential weaknesses in integrated building systems. Media fascination with the case has grown over time rather than diminished. True crime documentaries, podcasts, and investigative reports continue to analyze every aspect of Derrick's planning and execution. His complete disappearance and the absence of any credible sightings have elevated him to almost mythical status among those interested in perfect crimes. The psychological profile developed by the FBI remains the most comprehensive analysis of Derrick's motivations and methods. Behavioral analysts concluded that his crime represented not financial desperation, but intellectual challenge and professional frustration. The theft was his way of proving his superior understanding of complex systems and demonstrating how much everyone had underestimated his capabilities. "Derrick lived in a world where his intelligence and expertise weren't fully recognized," noted criminal psychologist Dr. Amanda Foster. "He was significantly more capable than his job required and more insightful than his colleagues realized. The theft was his ultimate demonstration of exactly how much everyone had underestimated him. The $9.2 million remains missing and untraceable." Financial experts believe that Derrick was disciplined enough to avoid spending the stolen money conspicuously, instead living modestly while the statute of limitations runs on various aspects of his crime. Federal charges will never expire, but practical prosecution becomes more difficult with each passing year. Some law enforcement officials privately express grudging admiration for Derrick's achievement. He committed a major crime without violence, without accomplices who could betray him, and without leaving meaningful evidence. His escape plan was executed as flawlessly as the theft itself, demonstrating a level of criminal sophistication that is exceptionally rare. The bank where Derrick committed his crime has returned to normal operations, though the electrical and security systems have been completely redesigned with new protocols that eliminate the vulnerability he exploited. The basement area where the theft occurred has been renovated, and new procedures ensure that no single contractor can ever again have unsupervised access to both electrical systems and vault areas. Derrick's former colleagues in the electrical contracting industry speak of him with a mixture of bewilderment and professional respect. They had worked alongside him for years, handling similar jobs and facing identical opportunities. Yet only Derrick had seen the criminal possibility that existed within routine maintenance procedures. "We all knew that power outages affected security systems," said David Park, a former colleague, "but none of us thought about exploiting those vulnerabilities." Derrick wasn't just technically brilliant, he was thinking several steps ahead of everyone else, including the people who designed the systems we maintained. The FBI's reward offer of $250,000 remains in effect, and the investigation technically continues, though, with minimal active resources. Agent Rebecca Martinez, now retired from the Bureau, maintains that Derrick will eventually be found, but acknowledges that the trail has gone completely cold. "Nobody disappears forever," Martinez insists. "Derrick was incredibly thorough and patient, but he's still human. Eventually, he'll make contact with someone from his past, develop health issues that require medical records, or simply get tired of living a completely artificial life. When that happens, we'll be ready." The search for Derrick Lawson continues sporadically, driven more by tips from the public than by active FBI investigation. Sightings are reported periodically. An electrician in Alaska whose technical knowledge seems unusual. A maintenance worker in rural Nevada who pays for everything in cash. A man in small-town Colorado whose mannerisms match witness descriptions. None have proven legitimate, but each generates renewed hope that Derrick might eventually make the mistake that leads to his capture. The legend of Derrick Lawson serves as a permanent reminder that the most sophisticated crimes are often committed not by career criminals, but by intelligent, patient individuals who understand the systems they choose to exploit. His case has influenced security protocols, investigative procedures, and academic understanding of white-collar crime. Whether Derrick Lawson will ever be caught remains an open question that may never be answered. His crime was so precisely planned and his escape so thoroughly executed that he may have achieved something most criminals never manage: permanent anonymity and freedom from consequences. The story of the electrician who stole $9.2 million during a 10-minute power outage will likely remain unsolved, a testament to how technical expertise, careful planning, and perfect timing can overcome even the most sophisticated security measures. Derrick Lawson committed the perfect electrical crime and vanished into the storm, leaving behind only questions and the grudging admiration of those who study criminal excellence. No alarms, no gun, no violence. Just a man with access, knowledge, and perfect timing. The FBI still lists Derrick James Lawson on its most wanted list under financial crimes. Reward: $250,000 for credible information leading to his capture and the recovery of the stolen funds. If you have information about Derrick Lawson's whereabouts, contact the FBI immediately.